So I've got a very special guest on the massive channel that we've got here. So we've got Michelle, and I studied with Michelle on the course. So I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, introduce the topic you came up with, because I was too lazy to come up with one myself. But luckily, it's an absolute corker. So yeah, let's go there and do So Michelle.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. And just like Joe said, he and I went through a sleep coaching training together, and I'm still wrapping up. So I'm in my last week. So I'm pretty much a brand new sleep coach after this week. And yeah, I'm just pumped to be here. Oh, yes, the thing that we decided we wanted to chat about today, based on a lot of the feedback that I was hearing from other students and people going through kind of a self-coaching program during their insomnia, was this issue of, but what if I know what I'm supposed to do? What if I have this education piece and I understand what insomnia is, and I understand that I need to stop struggling and do nothing, but I can't do it? So this whole idea of how do you get from knowing to actually doing? And so that's what we are going to talk a little bit about today and share our experiences, because I think we have different experiences about what helped us. And so hopefully it can help you guys out there, those of you who are going through it.
Very good. And the recorder is working, right?
Yeah, I hope so. We will find out.
Oh,
we'll find out at the end.
You press record as well, just in case. I'm sure it is. It says, but okay.
Should be good. I think so.
All right.
That would be awful.
Yeah. So Michelle, she had insomnia for 5 years, and yeah, I think from what we've been discussing, I think the way we overcame it, the same behavior changes, but we came at it from a slightly different angle, whereas you came at the hyperarousal, the thought pattern changes first before you put into the behavior changes. But so yeah, what would you say? So yeah, how did you get to that stage? Where did you find out about CBTi and the behaviors, but you weren't in a place where you could start doing them? Have a little.
Yeah, so for me, I did try CBTi probably at least a year before I found this coaching program and kind of started down this particular path. And at the time, my insomnia was really intense. My hyperarousal was really, really strong. So I was not sleeping very much at all. I was having a lot of hyperarousal symptoms. I was frequently having a lot of nights of zero sleep. And my body was just really stuck in that fight or flight, like immense amount of anxiety, stress, panic, all of it. And at the time, of course, a key part of CBTi is, sleep windows and stimulus control. And so I think one of the things I struggled with at the onset of doing CBTi was choosing an appropriate sleep window for myself, because I could frequently have 3 to 4 nights in a row with no sleep, and then have the next following night, like that fourth night, maybe 9 hours, as my body completely just collapsed. And I thought, well, what kind of sleep window? Like, my sleep was so erratic for a lot of the time that was a challenge. So I remember choosing, I think it was between 5.5 and 6 hours, something of that nature. And at that time, I was struggling getting to sleep. I was struggling staying asleep. All of it was a struggle. And the sleep window at that time increased my anxiety a lot. And in hindsight, I think I should have chosen a different sleep window, to be honest, something a little bit longer for myself. And at the same time, the stimulus control component for me during my really high anxiety, high hyperarousal, I was really constantly watching the clock to think, okay, has it been 20 minutes? I'm not sleeping. I need to get up, because I became really scared about the idea of, like, I'm associating my bed with wakefulness and with anxiety and all these things. So I was coming at it from such a place of anxiety that at the time it actually elevated my anxiety. And so for me, I had to kind of start off with more like approaches that focus more on the cognitive part of it and on the emotional part of it, to then be able to go, oh, I'm going to set this alarm at this time in the morning, and I'm going to, like that kind of thing. So I had to enter into certain behavior changes from a different angle for myself anyways.
So I think if you got someone that you're running a CBTi course with that doesn't understand that you can't be perfect, and that if it's done in the wrong way, that I completely know what you mean, it can. I mean, I was incredibly lucky, at the most amazing course on mine, but if it's done in the wrong way, and then people think, well, I have to. So that's why stimulus control, where you base it on how you feel, and then you get out of the bed if you start feeling that anxiety as well. I think it comes down to that expectation on yourself. So if you think that if I have to do it completely perfectly, and I have to do it completely perfectly all the time, then it's not going to work. And then certainly with me, with my insomnia, once you've reached it, it does chip away at your sense of self-esteem and your self-worth, and you start feeling incredibly self-critical. So if you don't have that kindness during the course, and then you mess up because you get up late, or you don't follow it perfectly, then you can just go down that hole where you feel you're criticizing yourself even more. So done in the right way, I think it's incredibly powerful and amazing. Done in the wrong way, it can create more anxiety and more. So I think you do need that kindness and that understanding that you don't need to do it perfect, and you can't do it perfectly, and it is just a mindset shift over the long term, but really about being kind of gentle with it in the short term as well.
I love that distinction, and that you completely kind of hit the nail on the head. Like when I was doing it with a very I think well-meaning psychologist who didn't really understand a lot about sleep necessarily, but it was very rigid. And I feel like it was a very rigid approach, and exactly that it was more flexible, more gentle, not aiming for that perfection, and kind of understanding and almost predicting those bumps along the way, and how to navigate that a lot better. So I think like my experience because I forced a very rigid process on myself. And that had at the time kind of not a lot of room for flexibility, and I didn't understand the concept of self-kindness at that point during this whole process. But so I think you're certainly right that the type of approach that you're taking can matter for sure, especially depending on where you're at too. Because I think even a rigid CBTi approach actually works for quite a few people as well. So it really depends on what's going to work for you.
But that's so common, I think, the lack of self-kindness, because it does take away from you insomnia, and you stop being, especially you had it a long time, you kind of know you're not, you kind of think, what if I didn't have it? So the avoidance sleep efforts, where you start like stripping away bits of your life, and then the more you do that, the lower your head goes, and the more your self-esteem is taken from you. So it does kind of, you do join it at a stage where you're actually in quite a sort of vulnerable place. And so if it is I mean, it might work, certain personalities, they can have that really strict regime, like you were saying. But I think certainly you do need that softness to begin with. And then when you start seeing, okay, this is working, that's when you kind of build it, and then you can kind of go into like that. But so in terms of when you so what would you say, so the topic is how to go from that place where go from that place where you actually put in these behaviors in place. What would you say in your mind was what got you to a stage where, once you found this new way of teaching, that actually brought you to that stage where you could start putting these behaviors in place, when the mindset shift? What would you
I think for me, a big part of it was, as I mentioned before, like I had really, really high anxiety. And I know everybody with insomnia is dealing with anxiety at certain levels. And I feel like throughout my 5 years of insomnia, it was almost like my anxiety and fear just like grew and grew and grew. And so at the time, as a result, of course, my hyper arousal kept growing along with that. For me, it was almost starting at a place of mindfulness. And for me, that meant I needed to learn how to observe myself, observe my thoughts, observe my emotions, observe hyperarousal symptoms, as opposed to them just constantly happening to me and initiating a panic response and everything kind of spiraling from there. So I think one of my first steps was actually, I was fortunate in that I have experience meditating with mindfulness, but I wasn't necessarily applying it to my insomnia. So I started applying mindfulness more to my insomnia and just dropping into that seat of being an observer with myself more, and working on allowing a lot of these different thoughts and feelings and sensations to come up without trying to push them away, almost like creating space for them and for what was happening. And that was one of my main starting points, was just, can I observe this and can I be with this without trying to really run from it, push it away, which was only creating more intensity, more fear, more anxiety, more of everything that I didn't want. So that was really my starting point. And then from there, I started to kind of, really work with, I guess, principles of what they call acceptance and commitment therapy, which is this idea of, there is that initial layer of pain and suffering that we go through when we experience insomnia, right? We are going to feel really tired. We are going to have the headache. We're going to have some aches and all these things from not sleeping for extended periods of time. But there's that entire second layer of pain and suffering that we are adding on unintentionally, unknowingly, through how we are reacting mentally and emotionally to everything that is happening, right? To every thought, to the emotions, the sensations, like our reactions can either add that huge second layer of struggle and pain, or it can remove it. And so a lot of those principles are based on this idea of like, yes, you're going to have this initial, whatever that is, that pain and suffering, but that you actually have a lot of control over whether or not you are going to add on that second layer of struggle. And that second layer is often huge. That is sometimes even bigger than the first layer a lot of the time. And so that was a really important concept for me to understand and to experiment with. And so part of that for me was going from that mindfulness piece of observing and making space for all these things to then actually trying to welcome them in, so that I could actually start to teach my brain that, okay, these twitches you're having, these adrenaline rushes, these thoughts, they can be safe. So it was for me like almost like a brain retraining, and trying to show my brain, like, instead of reacting in a way that is involving panic or frustration or fear, I'm going to react in a way that welcomes a lot of this and creates space for it, and basically to show my body and my brain that like everything that's happening is really safe. And so for me, it was a lot of like using, I guess, that cognitive piece, along with really trying to feel like all the different emotions that were coming up and letting go. So really cognitive and emotional work that then prepared me to go, okay, and now I'm going to be able to stop watching the clock. And now I'm going to be able to get up at this time. And now I'm going, right. And now I'm going to, if I'm really anxious, get out of bed and do these things. So it was, for me, almost like the gateway to being able to make behavior change was at first that cognitive and emotional piece and looking at my reactions. Since for me personally, I felt like my reactions were a huge part of the problem. Like they were like really, really in the wrong direction. They were not serving me at all. They were not helpful. And when I would try to do certain behaviors, and again, this was under a program that was just too rigid for me at the time. All of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, all this hyperarousal would kind of really intensify to a point where I almost felt, for me, it was like unmanageable. Like I did not have the tools to cope, if that makes sense. Yep. So it was a struggle. So for me personally, that's kind of where I was at. So I needed to kind of learn. I needed to learn literally, like, how do I feel these feelings of fear, intense fear, and let them go, as opposed to repress them or ruminate and hold on. Things like that, which sound really simple because you would think like, well, of course I feel emotions. But in my case, I think I was repressing a lot of emotions because they were horrifying to me and they were very fear-based. So even just basic skills like learning how to feel these difficult things and mindfulness to be with certain thoughts and how do I accept and kind of how do I greet all of these things a little bit differently was my gateway to behavior change.
Yeah. So I think so if you're trying to fight the course, because it is hard, especially if you've had it a long time, because it's all behavior changes and it's all thought pattern changes. And if you've had those for a long time, to try and break those down, you can't do it perfectly. So if you're fighting with the course and every time you do something that you don't think is correct or right or incorrect, and if you have that response of self-criticism or fear or worry, when you don't do it perfectly, it is going to just make it incredibly difficult to do. But with me, so I think it came from me. Just first of all, I needed to know that actually this was something that was going to help me because the confidence as well is a really because I think the more things you try to overcome your insomnia and the more times you fail, the more every time you try that, it just chips away. So you start when you've got no insomnia, say 100%. When you have your insomnia and then all these things that you try and then they don't work, it just gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower that it will ever be overcome. So, and that's why I think all the misinformation out there is so damaging to people, because it just creates that feeling that there is something incredibly wrong with me, because when I go to a doctor, they should know, and then they give me this advice that I've tried 1,000 times before, or I go online and they tell me to eat this supplement, or I try to do this, or I eat this supplement, or I type in a YouTube video and they tell me this relaxation technique which they will promise will put me to sleep in 10 minutes. Every time you do those things, it just puts you lower and lower and lower. So for me, I found out about CBTi 10 years earlier than I actually came to it. And I think I didn't properly look into it because I just thought, well, it's just going to be another thing that I'm going to try, and it's just I'm going to get the same result that I've got before, but I'm going to put all my heart and effort and work into doing this behavior changes and basically to be in the same place I am now. So I think just the real understanding for me of the fact that it is going to work for you, so real understanding of how sleep works, and just knowing about the sleep drive and knowing about hyperarousal, and just really getting the basics of what it is, what CBTi is, and what these behavior changes are, just to make it incredibly simple. That's when you will know that so just getting that understanding that it is actually going to work for you, I think, is the first step, because I think every insomniac will feel that they've got no confidence that it can be cured, because they think,
I've
tried everything, and then they think these behavior changes and these thought pattern changes are going to be the same as all the other things they've tried, which is really damaging, because it kind of, the thing that actually works gets buried incredibly deep, and it makes it much harder to overcome your insomnia, because you lose that confidence that you can. But and I think that comes, and also stories like this of people that have overcome their insomnia, because you never hear stories, oh, I now take this supplement and now I sleep perfectly every night. Because if you sleep perfectly, you wouldn't need a supplement. So
Yeah.
you don't ever
Right.
hear stories, any other stories about how people overcame their insomnia. It's never.
No, that's just it. And
Yeah.
and I wonder, and what was the thing that made you, because you mentioned you found CBTi 10 years before, you dismissed it for all the reasons that I relate to as well, because you've just given up. You just are convinced that your insomnia is so bad and so unique and so much worse than you're so broken that nothing can possibly help. So you just are in that space. What was the thing that actually made you look back at it, or gave it the second chance to say, well, let's give this a go? Like, what was that moment for you?
It was, I literally just found out about the sleep drive, and that's crazy, because everyone knows when it comes to food, the information is diet and a well-balanced, and that's how you, but I just learned about the sleep drive. So I think it was a Harvard article. I was just reading about it, and I learned about the homeostatic sleep drive and how the sleep drive works. But literally, the only thing that produces sleep is wakefulness, and so the longer you're awake, the sleepier you feel. And so I just looked into the sleep drive, and then how CBTi anchors your circadian rhythm, anchors your homeostatic sleep drive. And I just thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And why have I never heard that before? So I just had enough. And I think when I looked into it, and then I saw a few reports online about people who had overcame their insomnia. So that just gave me enough just to give it a go. I think because I tried so many other things, I thought, well, I haven't tried this. And actually, I have heard for the first time something that is actually incredibly good advice here. So that was enough to give me that confidence to go down the route of it. But really, even when I first started I thought, I'm going to improve my sleep. But that's what I thought. Well, 10%. I want a 10% improvement on my sleep. I want it to be slightly better, and that's the only thing I expected of it. And I really still didn't know, even when I was doing the course, before the course, I still didn't know enough about it to know that how powerful and how effective it is. But I think the change came for me within about 20 minutes of speaking to the person.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because she was just saying things that I'd never heard before, and just the only person I spoke to that actually understood it. And it was like, every thought I had thought and every behavior I had done, none of it was unique to them whatsoever. It was just like, it was just so common. And that's so just having trust in the person then gave me trust in the process, just knowing that they'd heard everything before and that actually they knew what they were talking about. So I think you need that starting point. You need to know that this isn't like everything else you've tried, because this gets to the root cause of insomnia, whereas everything else you tries to force and manipulate and make sleep, never gets to that root cause of why you have insomnia. So you started your course. So when you were doing the behavior changes, how did you get to that point where that struggle disappeared, and that how long would you say, when did you reach that point?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question. So the first thing I remember was that I got really excited at the, like when I started doing certain behavior changes. And for me, what that looked like was I had built up so many routines and like so much sleep hygiene that it's laughable. Just like I could write a book probably just on the sleep hygiene and like how much I constructed my like life and evenings to my sleep. And so I thought, great, I'm going to dismantle this like all at once, like overnight, gone, like every single, I was taking multiple sleep aids. I was all of it. So I at first did the whole like kind of a cold turkey system where I got rid of all of my sleep hygiene, all of my sleep aids. I put in a sleep window. I, stopped looking at the clock. I did a bunch of stuff all at the same time. And at that time, it was actually a bit too much to do it all at once. Like my hyperarousal kind of through the roof, even though I was excited about it. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can phase this in a little bit. Maybe I don't need to pull away all my sleep aids right now. Maybe I can just start with, setting this alarm. Maybe I can just start with not looking at the clock, into the evening. And if I'm really anxious and upset, choosing to do something enjoyable at night. If I'm awake, but I'm in bed, but I'm really comfortable, I can choose to stay in bed, that kind of thing, giving myself a little bit more flexibility, like you talked about in terms of stimulus control, as opposed to really watching the clock and, like, oh, it's 20 minutes, I got to get up. Instead, it was like this really gentle approach of much more gentle, just if I feel great and I'm resting and I might fall asleep, I'm going to stay here. But if I'm really agitated, I might get up and do something really fun.
It's not an act, it's not the action, it's the intention. So if you're in bed, the action is you're in bed and you're having a lovely time and you're happy and you're relaxed. That's great,
Right.
But if the intention is you're trying to force sleep and make yourself sleep and you get anxious and you get stressed and you get worried, then the intention is I'm trying to make myself sleep. And then so I think you need to shift that intention to actually you're not gonna,
that's huge. It's all about the intention behind it. And I think that was an education piece missing for me the first time around of doing any behavior change, was that like I didn't understand that at all. That just wasn't part of the conversation at the time. And so kind of doing it in the way that actually worked for me, like I think it probably took a couple months in terms of really seeing a lot of change. And again, like I did start with that cold turkey, it's all gone overnight, and that didn't work well for me. So I phased things in, and it probably took a full 2 months until I said, you know what, I'm now at the point where I'm really not using any sleep aids, or maybe I'm using just like a little bit of something. Like, so I really did just kind of go slowly and bit by bit. And it was helpful because once I saw that, oh, okay, once I've put one behavior change in place and let's say it was helpful, then that gave me more confidence to go, okay, and now I can stop doing this piece of sleep hygiene that I'm doing. Oh, that went okay. Oh, I didn't actually need that to sleep like I thought I did. I didn't need to take a bath at, 9 p.m. or whatever it was. Like, so with each thing that I did and that I, and then sometimes, I would go backward. I would have a moment where my hyperarousal will come up, would elevate from making a change, and I understood why, and so it was okay, and I just kind of kept going. And overall, it was going in the right direction. So it just gave me more confidence that I was going in the right direction, that I should keep going. And so I did. And I think I wanted to just say patience is great, but patience is so hard when you're in this process. So the idea of just letting more time, like keep doing what you're doing and let more time pass, is a better way to think of it. And so that was sort of my goal. I did not put a timeline on it. I don't know what your experience was with timelines and how you felt about that. I was very
I didn't
conscious
really
of that.
It wasn't like I need to have this fixed. I think it was just a gradual. I remember a few kind of speed bumps, a little mini, and I saw that as a kind of part of it, that actually you are going to have bits where you're not even going backwards. In a way, they were helpful because they taught me that actually I can still have these bad nights of sleep, or these few nights, but then as long as I continue with these behavior changes, then it's fine. And so I didn't, and that's kind of, so I try to shift people. I really hate that. I don't like learn from your failures, because then you're focusing on your failures. So I kind of, I think you learn far more from your successes. I do. That's why I don't like the whole focusing on your failure and learn from that. I think you do learn far more from your successes. And so I kind of try and twist everything round to a success. So even if you get up late and don't do it all perfectly, that's a success, because normally, people that don't have a sleep problem, they sometimes have die-ins. And sometimes people who don't have insomnia have really poor nights of sleep. So I kind of think when you're getting those things, that's just kind of you being a normal sleeper. or
Yeah.
So I do think that, just focusing on your successes throughout the course, and if you can do that, you're going to give yourself a much more easier time with it.
Yeah, I also like that it wasn't just this really simple linear process. Like, you had some speed bumps along the way, and you talked about, oh, it's easy to fall back into that mental pattern where you're criticizing yourself and you're hard on yourself, and learning from that and applying more self-kindness and knowing that that's just a normal part of the process. I think that's so useful, because it really is, like, it's not a straight line, right? I don't think it is for anybody. And it's helpful for people to know and expect that it isn't going to be a straight line, and that that's normal and it's part of the process. And it's also really normal to fall back into old thinking patterns. And I love that about, like, and then I fell back into this for a period of time and had to kind of find my way back. And as opposed to, I found this, I started it off and running and everything's perfect. Because when does that really happen? It's more,
it doesn't happen in any part of life.
It doesn't happen ever. Like, even when you're like, oh, I'm out, I'm good, like, you're going to slip back into some thought patterns at some point, and you're going to get freaked out, and you're going to criticize yourself and be hard on yourself. And you're going to be even harder on yourself because you think you're out of it, so to speak, because you've done certain work than you were before. And so it's like, it helps to expect that these things are coming, and so that you can just keep moving forward, as opposed to getting wrapped up in, like, oh God, oh no, I've taken a step back, or chastising yourself for having certain anxiety and thought patterns and all of it. You can kind of go, oh, here it is, it's happening, this is normal, and just keep going, and just, it's okay.
People fear the unknown, so if you can let them know that it's not the unknown, actually that is going to happen, then that does take the fear out of it. And so then, and especially because you would have had times as well where you'd have had those. I think everyone does. And so that's so important to know that actually that is going to happen. And just to expect it. And then when you expect it, and you know that it happens to everyone, and here we both are still no insomnia.
That's right.
Pretty well. Yeah.
That's
so
right. But you and I both still have some bad nights, right? Like, we're
a few nights ago I had a bad night of sleep. But I think it's just getting to that stage where before you had insomnia, you'd have a bad night of sleep, and then that would be it. That would be a bad night of sleep. But I think it's more than a bad night of sleep when you are trying to overcome your insomnia, because it's the meaning you attach to that bad night of sleep. It means that you've gone back to a stage where you're now an insomniac again, or it means that all this work you've done up to that point is now a complete waste of time, and there's no point carrying on, or it means that that was all a fluke, and I think once you start seeing improvements, if you do slip back, it's kind of like you've then got something to lose, because you're now. But if you can understand that it's going to happen, and know that everyone gets bad nights of sleep, even once I'm 2 years I haven't had insomnia now, and probably about 3 or 4 nights ago I had a bad night's sleep, but for no reason. I don't even know why. It doesn't matter why. It's like It's the same as every sleeper. So the
Exactly.
expectation, I think, is really high of what people demand of themselves and their sleep, and in just general, people demand a lot of themselves all the time. But
Do you find now, because like when I think about like how those thought patterns can come back in, right? And you have these speed bumps, and do you find now 2 years later, let's say you have a bad night, do you find like that fear will still pop up and you'll kind of go, oh, there it is, like that kind of thing? Or are you at the point now where you've processed through so many of those types of nights, those speed bumps, that it's like a non-issue at this point?
It's a non-issue now, because I know as long as I keep with these behaviors, then it will get back to it. And I've got so much now of amazing night's sleep behind me, but I think it's completely my whole. That is something that I've kind of put behind me. So I don't get that anymore. But yeah, obviously when I do get it, I just go, oh. But you know, I've had a bad night's sleep. As a person would rather have had a good night's sleep that night, but it doesn't have the same attachment now to what it did when I'd only just sort of was coming out of my insomnia. I don't have that. It's not an effort. So before I had to make that kind of right, no, it's not. It's fine. It means this, and this, and so that was kind of like. But now it's all just habit. Now I think it's because I've done it so long now. It's just habit. So it's a habit that I don't worry about sleep, and it's a habit that I'm not fearful of sleep, and it's a habit that I don't think about it in that way. And I think that's the same. Is it now? Would you say it's become part of your identity that you're no longer, because you've had all that evidence that you can sleep really well? And what would you say?
I'm about, what is it? I think 8 months. I'm about 8 months in, and I would say for me, I'm not quite where you are at. If I have a bad night, the thoughts come back, the fear comes back, not always, but sometimes, and I'll catch it. And it's the same message, right? It's really my brain going, oh God, is this happening again? Like, it's this, like, it's trying to keep me safe. It's trying to warn me of something. And I guess the difference is now is just, I can see it for what it is. I can, be aware of it, as opposed to allowing it to be that runaway train. I don't buy into it. I know that it's just a thought. I know why my brain is doing it. I know my brain's just trying to keep me safe, and I can just kind of create space for it, let it go, as opposed to it becoming this thing that is going to spiral into other anxiety and fears and more hyperarousal and build and build and build. Instead, it's like, oh, there you are, it's like a familiar friend kind of. So that's kind of where I am now, where that can definitely still happen, but it doesn't go anywhere. And so I'm curious to know when I'll get to where you are, where it doesn't even come into my mind at all. I'm excited for that. That sounds great. But honestly, to be honest, like, if that never happens, I'm actually okay with it, because right now, like, it's not going anywhere. If it happens, it has no power. It's lost its teeth, so to speak. So if it wants to hang around, if my brain wants to continually kind of generate some of those thoughts and fears, if I have a bad night, like, I'm actually like totally fine. I'm fine with wherever that goes. I love how you said the word habit. Like, it's like you're in the habit of being in a good sleeper. You're in the habit of not having those certain thought patterns because you've created the new habits. And I think the habits are both mental and like physical habits that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is why it can be hard at the beginning, and it can take time, is because you're literally you are replacing really deeply ingrained, long-standing patterns when it comes to your habits, and trying to replace them with new habits. And I think that's part of why it can be so hard to go like, wait, I know this and I'm doing this. Why is there a push pull? Like, why is this difficult? But it's because, like you just said, it's that you're building a new habit or a series of new habits. And it's just, it can be hard, right? Like, your brain can kind of fight against that a little bit, and that's to be expected and totally normal.
Yeah. And I think, and again, that comes down to expectation. So I mean, so I had insomnia for 20 years. So say, well, and all my habits was getting up late and forcing sleep, finding sleep. So to kind of break down 20 years worth of habits and go, well, I've been doing my sleep course for 3 weeks now. Why?
Yeah.
Why isn't
Yeah.
this habit of
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't demand that of any, you know, if you were trying to reach the Olympics, after 3 weeks of throwing a shot put, and you're not going to go, oh, why aren't I now? But I think, and that's an expectation, and it kind of comes from, you know, obviously you want to overcome your insomnia because that's why you're doing it. And so when you run up against that, it does take a while for it to become automatic, and it does take a while for those habits to overcome. But I think just generally it does get better. But when you run up against those trickier times, I think that's when when it's not a habit yet, that's when it can become quite trying to continue with the behavior changes and to so say you've done 2 nights or 3 nights of sleeping well, and then you get a couple of nights in a row where you're then to get up at that same time and to get out of bed, that's hard. And we were talking about that earlier. I think for me it's just understanding what comes from a place where you know why you're doing it, but it is going to work for you. But also getting that clear on really what the purpose of doing this is for, which sounds ridiculous because obviously you want to overcome your insomnia. But I think you need to get really kind of clear on what your reasoning is behind that. So so what would you say kind of so I'll go for mine a bit, but what would yours say if you have to say to yourself what it has done for you overcoming your insomnia? What would your reasoning? So you're lying in bed during your course, but now you're 8 months on, you're lying in bed during the course, you've had a bad night's sleep 2 nights in a row, you want to stay and you want to just sort of chuck in the towel. Kind of what is your reason that keeps you going on with it?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. That's a big one. For me, it's really all encompassing, all of this stuff, right? Because it's like the desire to live my life as a whole. Like it's bigger than just wanting like to sleep. It's wanting to live with like less anxiety. It's wanting to be able to live my life in a way that feels important to me. It's like, it's become this thing. It's like in line with like my values at this point, kind of. So it's bigger than just sleep. Like this is in the way that if I have a bad night and fear shows up and anxiety shows up, the way that I'm going to show up to that is now really different. And that's as much a part of it for me as it is, getting up in the morning or any other, or not doing all the sleep hygiene, like all of it, kind of melds into one for me. And it's, I think like you said it before, it's almost like a different identity. Like you want to take on this identity of like, you're a normal sleeper now. This is part of your identity. I no longer, do yoga and meditation and take a bath and do X, Y, and Z to try to force myself to sleep. Like that's just not what I do anymore.
Well, we should say that's fine. You can. That's no.
You can do all those are all lovely things.
Yeah.
Those are all lovely things, and I love and I still do all of those things. But I do them for enjoyment or for my own relaxation, because I want to. But I used to do them, again, going back to intention and how important intention is. I would do these things obsessively. I
know this is for the viewers.
Yes, no, I love that you I'm so grateful you brought it up. I'm so grateful because like exactly, right? It's such like it's a nuanced thing and it can be easily missed, but it's so critical that even if you're doing like these really great positive things that are wonderful, like yoga, like meditation, acupuncture, baths, like the list is endless. If you're doing it with the intention to force yourself to sleep, it's just going to become another sleep hygiene tool that is going to prevent you from sleeping, because you're trying to control, you're trying to force, and it's going to increase your hyperarousal. So I did all that stuff a ton. And now I do it for totally different reasons. And it's great. And it actually probably does help me sleep because it's relaxing and it's nice and, all of that. But yeah, my reasoning for it is that I just want to live my life differently at the end of the day. Like, I just don't want to be constantly stuck in that same pattern of fear and anxiety and control. It's exhausting. And I just don't want to live in that energy anymore. Yeah. How about you?
So yeah, I think so yeah, just getting clear on that reason. I mean, because it is hard when you're trying to say
So
during the trickier bits. But yeah, I think just so I do detail and what it kind of did to me in my emotional. So it did kind of strip away so much of all the things I love from my life. So you know, I was always just in pursuit of this. So yeah, so the avoidance sleep efforts. So just I'd strip out going to see music in the evening. I'd strip out surfing in the evening. The jobs I was doing, the friends I'd go see, it had a huge impact on my marriage. Yeah. So, and it's not a kind of a case of I'm going to put so much pressure on you have to overcome insomnia for this, but when those behavior changes were hard, because in the first few weeks it is a tricky thing, you know, it does get sticky. So when those I didn't want to do it, I would think of those reasons that actually it was for my health, it was for my happiness, and it was for my, and so that would override the sort of a long-term goal of what I wanted would sort of trump the short-term kind of pain of actually getting up out of bed and just pushing that away in order to continue with those habit changes and behavior changes. So that would be yeah, so health, happiness, it really everything, you know, my friendships, my relationships, just
wanting your life back, right? It's wanting your life back.
Yeah. But of course, you know, as we both did, you know, that's not to say I did it perfectly all the time, you know. Even despite that, there were times where I didn't do it perfectly, but
of course,
overall that was enough, you know, just getting really clear on why I was doing it and having enough confidence in how, you know, incredibly effective it was, did give me enough of a sort of a drive to actually put those behaviors and put those thought patterns and kind of do the practical steps needed in order to overcome insomnia. Because yeah, if you do a sleep course, the person who's teaching you, they can't make you sleep right. They could be literally the best in the world. There could be no one better than them in the entire planet, you know. But it really, once they've given you the behavior changes and given you that knowledge and kind of set you up and supporting you throughout the way, it does come down to really understanding why you want to do it, and just having enough kind of self-love to know that actually you're worthy of doing it. Because, you know, like we were saying earlier, it does strip away your self-worth and self-esteem, and so you think, well, actually, you know what, I'm not going to bother with it now, and because I'm no good anyway, I'm not going to do it anyway. You know, I always fail at these things. That's kind of how you get. So if you can get that clear with a bit of kindness as well, mixed in, yeah, you're on the right path for it.
I love that. It's like knowing your why gave you the courage to do it and to follow through with it. So that's really cool. I love that. And you're right, though, it is hard because you do get to that point where you've lost so much confidence in yourself just as a person, because so much you've stripped away so much and you feel like you've lost so much and you feel so shut down and everything, that it can be hard to be open to new things or to think that you just maybe that you're capable of doing these new things, especially because it's hard. It can be really hard. Again, like creating these new habits and new thoughts and all these sort of things. So I think you said coming back to that self-kindness, that idea of like approaching it with that self-kindness and then how you would greet that. And yeah, that's really great. That makes sense. That's very helpful. It's all about self-kindness. The more self-kindness, the better. Because we're also, I feel like insomniacs, especially, we're so hard on ourselves. We put so much pressure on ourselves. and so it can be hard to actually be kind to ourselves during these types of things, but it's so helpful if you can. Even the intention, going back to intention, even the intention of wanting to be kind to yourself can be helpful, right? Even if you feel like I'm not really good, what does that mean, being kind to myself? You know, even having the intention that you're going to approach it this way, or you're going to be kind and give yourself a bit more grace is helpful.
Yeah, but yeah, it is so important just to set your reason why and be nice to yourself in this course. It's so important. If you're you're beating yourself up, it becomes tricky. But I think just knowing why you're doing it and knowing that you are going to mess up. Not even mess up, it's not messing up, it's doing what everyone does. So it's just doing it. To sleep perfectly. Normal sleepers don't do everything perfectly. So actually, when you don't do everything perfectly during your sleep course or during your time you're in your overcome insomnia, actually what you're doing is you're being a normal sleeper. So actually, by not doing it perfectly, you are doing it perfectly, which is a little bit of a, what's that called? A paradox.
Yes.
It's a bit of a paradox, but so by not doing it perfectly, you're doing it right. So this is kind of tailored customer service here. So I had a question from Ellie. I think, I've got her name wrong, that's not going to look good. I think it was Ellie. Apologies if I haven't. And you discussed this. So we were talking about the wall, how so she worded it slightly differently, but I said we've talked about this before, so I'm gonna bring it up in this as well. So explain to the viewers and go through the wall, what that is and what how that makes you feel, and
Sure. So this concept actually came up talking to a student in a sleep program who was sort of describing this experience where she felt like she was having a hard time connecting to certain friends and family because of how she was feeling and what she was going through. And I completely resonated with that. And to me, it really was this feeling of there's this wall between me and other people. And what that really is you can feel like an inability to connect with people all of a sudden, even people that you love, that are in your family, close friends, people that you normally connect easily with. Sometimes when you're going through something like this, you can suddenly feel like you are having a hard time connecting in the same way. And it can quite literally feel like there is a wall between you and that person. And it can be hard if you don't understand that that's normal or why that's happening. But I'm curious, so did you experience that on and off throughout your 20 years of insomnia as well?
I described that as sort of when it was really bad, looking through a train window, looking at the world through a train window with the color drained out, so it's sort of just whizzing past, and everything's grayed out behind that window. And I think part of it comes from that no one understands insomnia, and you can't help them understand it, because when you don't understand insomnia yourself, because when you don't know how to overcome it and you don't know why you feel like this, because there's so many things that you do as an insomniac that once you realize that actually there's a name for that, there's a name for active sleep efforts, there's a name for avoidant sleep efforts, there's a reason why you get up late, there's a reason why you can only sleep at a certain time. But until you understand sleep, then you can't explain it to anyone, because you don't know why you feel that way. You know how you feel, you know what it makes you feel, but you don't understand sleep enough to be able to explain it. So no one understands it, you don't understand it, and you wish you didn't have it, but you don't know how to to get out of it. So that just creates such a big divide between you and everyone else who don't have this this insomnia. And most other things people understand a lot more, you know, like so, but it's so misunderstood, and yeah, the whole world doesn't know it. And yeah, when you speak to people that do as well.
What a relief. No, I love the analogy that you just mentioned from the train. Like, it's everything is grayed out and there's that glass in front of you, and that's exactly it. And I just have these memories of, you know, on the rare time I would go to, let's say, like a party or a wedding, like something in the evening, because like I did a lot of avoidant sleep efforts where I just didn't do those things anymore. But when I would, it was a lot of the time it was this feeling of, here I am showing up, I'm going through something that is feeling very physically and emotionally intense, and not in a good way. And everyone else here is just living their normal, like they're just living normal life and they're having a great time. And I'm over here having this experience that feels completely unique and because nobody else is going through it and nobody understands. So it's not like you can connect with them on that. They don't understand. And, you know, and to make matters worse, it might even make them really uncomfortable to have that conversation with you, because they may not know how to be there for you, or it could be awkward, right? Like that sort of stuff. Like they may not know what to say, or, you know, you're in a different emotional state as well. So it's it can really impact your ability to connect with people, because you feel almost like you're in a different, like, oh, you're living in a different world all of a sudden. These people over here in this world, living normal life, having your feeling mentally, emotionally, and spiritually depleted, depressed, and exhausted. And I think it's that amount of the depletion of it all, and almost there's a feeling of shutdown. There's a shutdown. I'm not sure if I'm describing that right, but it feels like a mental and also on a physical level, right? Like you're just shut down, and you're not in. Oh, I feel like there we go. Sorry, my video did something weird. But because you're so shut down, you're not in the mode to be socially connecting with people, if that makes sense. But you've maybe put yourself in a situation where it's expected of you to be socially connecting with people who are in that place where it would be really easy. So it's this mismatch going on. And if you've never experienced it before, I had never experienced that before my insomnia. I had actually was one of these people. I was lucky. I usually found it really easy to connect with people, and all of a sudden I was finding it hard, and that was really difficult to experience, also because I had no idea why. But I really do think it's because you feel like nobody understands, because a lot of the times nobody understands, and you are in a different physical and emotional state, right?
And I think just when you get to that, when you start hearing, and that can, so even before you overcome your insomnia, just understanding it is just so lovely. It's oh, it's frozen again. I'm gonna probably move this laptop downstairs because I think the internet connection is gonna be better.
Oh, it's huge.
1 second.
There we go. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah. Let's see if that.
There you go.
It's very good. Yeah. I think once you reach a stage where you understand it, but I remember even just after my first session, it was just like a massive weight had been lifted off, because I hadn't even started the behavior changes yet. I hadn't started the thought work changes, but just knowing that actually what I was going through was completely normal. It's just so normal. I mean, insomnia is just there's nothing unique to it at all. I mean, all the clients we were seeing on the course, everything they were said, Jane said that last week, or they said it in a different way. It's just like, I haven't met anyone whose insomnia is, no one's ever said anything that surprises me about it. I mean, you know, some of the kind of active things that people do to try and force their sleep, but they're all the same intention and reason why they're doing it. So yeah, just get into that stage where you know that actually it is incredibly normal. It's quite dull. once
Yeah.
once you
I couldn't
understand it, it's just like,
I couldn't agree. I had the same experience where
Mm.
relief came from learning before any change happened, like immense amount of relief, which of course having that relief helps make change as well.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, like when I didn't understand, I think the biggest thing for me with this idea of the wall and not being able to connect in the same way was I didn't understand that my struggling with the insomnia was creating such a huge amount of pain and suffering for myself, and was like my own struggle and fighting and kicking against it was creating such emotional depletion for myself. And that was a big part of why I was feeling so shut down. And as a result of feeling so depressed and depleted and shut down, I therefore then had this trouble connecting and relating to people. When I look back at it now, if I had just known, first of all, like it's how you're showing up to this, it's how you're reacting to everything that is creating a big, not the whole thing, but it's creating a whole layer of struggle for you. And it is that constant struggle that is making you feel so depressed and so shut down. And that's the thing leading to the wall. Like if I had just known, it's like you just said, then you know, oh, this is actually really normal. It makes a lot of sense that because of this is happening over here, that as a result, this is happening now. And just when I was in it, you're so in it and you can't really see objectively. So you don't know what's going on, and it's almost scary. You're like, why am I feeling this way? You know, why can't I? And so it's scary when you don't understand why.
It's just so much effort. Like, so that's the whole thing when you got insomnia. It's not like you're not trying to overcome it. You're trying what you think is everything. So it's like, and it's just not working. It's just making it worse. But so all the behavior changes we teach, they're to give you, you know, that structure and that kind of, but actually they're just there for kind of when you need them. But really, when you overcome insomnia, that's when you just make absolutely no effort to sleep whatsoever. You know, and you know, you could say, well, I get up at the same time every day, so that's effort, or I only go to bed when I'm sleepy, that's effort. But actually it's not. That's habit now, and it's actually harder for me to do the opposite now. So really I make no effort to sleep, and it's not even like I have a healthy relation. I just have no kind of relationship with sleep whatsoever. I just I don't think about it in my day. I don't worry about it in my day. If I don't sleep as well as that is. So yeah, that's kind of that place where you're just making no effort. So I think the whole kind of the task is, because you to go from making huge amount of effort to then to tell people make no effort. You can't bring people from massive amount of effort to no effort. That's where you're trying to get them to, but you can't get them there.
So that's hard.
The whole process of the course and the behavior changes, but really that's not the end goal. That's not the destination. It's you put them in place to give, because you've got loads of structure before. You've got thousands of rules. You must do, you must not do, you must not do this. So really the teaching is you swap those out for 5 rules that actually work, and then you slowly take them away once you feel confident and once you feel happy and once you feel relaxed. And then when you're properly through it, there's no effort to sleep, and that's when you know.
Yeah, it's like you have to put in a little bit of effort to get to a point where you don't have to put in any effort.
Yeah, but the effort works. That's the difference.
Exactly. The right effort, the right effort, right? Because every insomniac is all about the efforts, but it's just like in the wrong direction for the most part, right? But we're really good at trying hard. We're really good at it.
you're pushing a massive boulder up a hill.
That's right.
And then, but actually you should be pushing.
Yeah,
You're pushing the wrong boulder. They don't want that one. You know, even if you get it to the top, it's just going to roll back down because it's the wrong one. So,
That's exactly it.
yeah.
I'm curious, so with this concept of the wall, did you ever feel the need to pretend like you were okay with other people?
Yeah, I think so. So the people you were with all the time, I think you just couldn't, because you were with them, and so they knew. But yeah, because you want to be doing the things you love, and you want to carry on. So yeah, I mean, you did, and I think that when I could, that was more helpful than doing the opposite. You know, that was actually, if I could do that, but actually I go, actually no, I didn't sleep that well, but actually I feel now I'm not worried and focused about it, then actually even just pretending that I'm okay did make me feel a lot better. But yeah, it was you know, sometimes it did get hard to do that. But yeah, I think time-wise we're going to wrap it up. But thank you, Michelle. As I shall have you back on the channel again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thousands of people, but actually we're growing. We're just getting big.
Every day. Every
day, one a day. Much for watching, everybody, to all the viewers, and I shall see you on the next video. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.